I don't know if this year's General Assembly, called GA informally, the annual national gathering of UUs to do the business of the association and to learn and share with each other about how we are practicing our living tradition. I'm not sure if this one was just particularly good or that I actually got to experience more of it than I usually do, but this year's GA was a banger. We elected two new co-moderators, the Reverend Kimberly Quinn Johnson and Bill Young, and thanked our previous two co-moderators, the Reverend Meg Riley and Charles Dumond, for their awesome service to our faith for these last 6 years. It was a contested election, and as it always is in such situations, I am deeply grateful to know that whichever way the gathered body had decided, we would have been fortunate to have that person or persons as our moderator or moderators. I'm personally delighted that Reverend Kimberly and Bill won this election. Reverend Kimberly and I both started at Meadville Lombard together in 2012, and I hold her in particularly high esteem, having undergone the process of ministerial formation in the trenches, so to speak, with her. Bill had served on the UUA board for 4 years, including as their secretary, among other roles, and I have always appreciated what I have witnessed of him. Our faith is going to benefit from their wisdom and leadership greatly in these next 6 years. This year, there were 5 actions of immediate witness initially proposed, and only 3 are able to be voted on each year. AIWs are statements about a significant action, event, or development in the world that requires immediate engagement and action among UU congregations and affiliated groups, things we want to say something about now that can't wait. The 3 that passed this year were faithful defiance of authoritarianism, a call to action, reaffirming our covenants for democracy and freedom. The second was funding global LGBTIQ freedom amid crisis, a call for immediate action and solidarity. I'm not sure why the letters are in the order that they're in that, but that's what they were. And third, we welcome and reaffirm all people have inherent worth and inalienable rights. That last one has to do with care for immigrants, regardless of legal standing and the necessity of due process. Each AIW contains statements about our values, defines what they perceive as the crisis, suggests personal and congregational actions, advocacy, and public witness, and some provide resources as well for how to be involved. The process for congregational study action issues, CSAIs, we love our acronyms like the federal government, has undergone an overhaul in the last few years, so it's been a little bit since the last time that we had one. After some process issues that impacted voting this year, the first vote was thrown out, and the second one gave us our 2025 CSAI, Abolition, Transformation, and Faith Formation. The new process is for congregations to have 2 years to consider the CSAI, and the third year, the gathered body at General Assembly will vote on a statement of conscience. That statement will help guide the UUA and how we respond to that issue publicly. This CSAI was sponsored by the Church of the Larger Fellowship, our largest congregation, and one that has no brick and mortar site. That is, they are entirely online and/or available through the mail. This is noteworthy as they currently serve almost 2,000 incarcerated Unitarian Universalists across the country. I am really excited that this was the CSAI chosen for this year, as it is a topic I've personally been exploring this last year. As CLF staff wrote in the CSAI, in part, the job of abolition is not limited to the prison industrial complex. We believe that in order to fully embrace abolition, we need to restructure our society in ways that eliminate violence, discrimination, and the causes of these things. At CLF, we connect our theology of abolition with issues such as the genocide in Gaza, ICE detention, discriminatory housing, food deserts, climate justice, and other social justice issues. We have heard time and time again from our partners in Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities, and from both formerly and currently incarcerated individuals, that it is not enough to abolish the prison industrial complex. We must, they teach us, abolish the processes of dehumanization which made the prison industrial complex possible in the first place. That combination of changing systems, hearts, minds, and spirit is all a part of the liberatory theology of Unitarian Universalism. I know this has been a lot to take in, and if you're wondering about more information, I will be getting a list with links sent out in one of our emails. So far we've covered the moderators, the actions of immediate witness, and the congregational study action issues. And hopefully I'll get to explore some of these a little bit more over the coming year. Okay, so that is some of the business that happened at GA, but business isn't all that happens at GA. There are worship services every day, including one for Juneteenth, which was wonderful. The themes of freedom in this year's Juneteenth service particularly spoke to the CSAI on abolition. I don't always get to experience a lot of GA when it's live. This year was year 5 of me serving as a GA chaplain lead or co-lead, and my GA gets interrupted a lot, depending on what is happening at GA and in the wider world. So this year, my GA was also included making sure that we had support available following the Scrimeti decision that was announced early, that upheld bans on medical procedures for affirming care for transgender minors, following our annual WARE lecture, which I'll speak about more in a few moments, and the bombings of Iran on GA Sunday. While our GA chaplain team wasn't providing all the support to GA attendees, we did make sure that there was support available and in place, and how to communicate that to people who are seeking care. So during GA, UU and human rights attorney Sam Ames and our UU General Counsel offered their insights and reflections on the Scrimeti decision. It was not recorded, but Sam offered a recap of that conversation with my colleague, the Reverend Sarah Lawal, who on a podcast that she hosts. Overall, it was, of course, a deeply disappointing decision, but there are reasons for hope, including that the case that was brought to the court was limited to transgender minors. If it had not been exclusive to minors, it may not have had the same outcome. Also, SCOTUS was clear that this was specific to medical interventions for minors and not inclusive of other non-medical interventions like changing clothing, pronouns, use of binders, etc. There were also interviews and talks from 2 authors and activists. First, Deepa Iyer, whose Social Change Now, a guide for reflection and connection, is this coming year's UU Common Read. We got to experience just a little bit of it. I used it in a service that I led, I think, back in January. And the other was with the Reverend Dr. Liz Theo-Harris of the Cairo Center and the Poor People's Campaign, whose book, You Only Get What You're Organized to Take, Lessons from the Movement to End Poverty, co-authored by Noam Sandweiss-Beck, was recently published by our own Beacon Press. While our UUA staff who work to make General Assembly happen each year have worked hard with our UUA board to reduce the number of events that take place to be more manageable for those in attendance, GA is still a lot. A new thing this year was the introduction of Meet the Moment wave cohorts. Our theme for this year's GA was Meet the Moment. And in the introduction for the wave cohorts, they write, a wave is a disturbance in a medium, the way energy moves through its context. Waves can teach us. When the wave encounters a change in the medium through which it is moving, when light refracts through a prism, or reflects off a mirror, or filters through an opening in the clouds, it does not stop moving, nor does it continue in the same way it had been moving before. It is changed, and it finds a new way to keep moving forward. Similarly, wave cohorts are groups that collectively imagine how Unitarian Universalism can shift, amplify, redirect, or spread out our energy in the midst of unfathomable changes in the social, political, religious medium around us. The spring cohorts, there were 11 of them, included worship, the collective practice of meaning-making, queer and trans communities in crisis, and growing administrative competence, confidence, and capacity across congregations, among others. And while all of this is wonderful and very cool, my own favorite bits of GA were the lectures, in part because they didn't feel like lectures. They felt like magical moments set aside in time, meant for us to be present to the moment, to each other, and the joys and challenges of being caring people in these times. Trademark. Unfortunately, I can't easily share the videos with you yet. Some may be available later, but some are only available behind logins. Anyway, the things that I loved the most were the Foz lecture, the Ware lecture, and the Berry Street essay. This year's Foz lecturer was the Reverend Sean Neil Barron, Associate Minister of Spiritual Deepening, Small Groups, and Digital Ministry at Foothills UU in Fort Collins, Colorado. The title of his lecture is A Theology of Unitarian Universalist Organizing. He says, "Here are my 3 primary credentials for having any authority to speak about community organizing. First, not to brag, but I am an okay-ish human most of the time. Second, sometimes I can say things that are entirely obvious and it's helpful. Third, I make it a practice to try to keep saying yes when people in my life ask me to show up. And even though I succeed maybe 50% of the time, I rest in the grace that is enough." I'll have a link for his adapted Substack post of this talk in the forthcoming email that I mentioned. But Reverend Sean has been at Foothills for 9 years now, 9. And only in the last 3 has he felt the years of showing up has finally started to bear fruit. Showing up at gay bars, community meetings, vigils, coffee with unknown community members, and so on. People recognize him now enough that when he's wearing his clerical collar and someone's religious trauma gets activated, someone else from the community comes up and says, "He's okay, he's from the gay church." Reverend Sean asserts that organizing can't happen well outside of relationship. You don't organize strangers. That's the big secret, that you get to know people for who they are as people. Not to try to ensnare them sometime in whatever you're organizing. You get to know them, learn their names. He says, "Community Organizing 101 is not about mass mobilization. It's about moments like I had standing in a bar when you really want to not be working, but here you are. It's about moments where you find yourself standing in between worlds, holding all of who you are, letting other people witness what that looks like, doing the same for them, and together, imperfectly, fumbling towards a belonging that is our birthright." He says that over time, if you keep showing up, you will eventually, years down the line, maybe get to witness how contact becomes relationship, relationship becomes solidarity, and solidarity becomes co-creation. That the alchemy of it goes like this: curiosity leads to trust, which leads to risk, which leads to shared power. This can't be rushed or forced or strategized. It takes the time it takes. He says, your power isn't in your follower count. It's in who will take your call at 10 p.m., who trusts you enough to say yes before they know what you're asking. That trusted currency, earned through showing up, through care that isn't a performance, through being present when it doesn't benefit you. That's what moves mountains. And last, he says, sometimes we progressive and religious liberals, we forget that people don't join a cause. People join people, not ideas. People join people, not institutions. People join people, not issues. Then there was the Ware Lecture, which has been hosted by the UUA and its predecessors since 1922 and has hosted a number of remarkable people. This year's speaker was Amara Jones, creator of Translash Media, a cross-platform journalism, personal storytelling, and narrative project that tells trans stories to save trans lives. She's a journalist and change maker and is a powerful and deeply insightful speaker. Jones spoke at length about the ways that anti-trans politics have brought us to this moment, which means, she says, that there's no way to save democracy without standing up for trans rights. Authoritarian movements around the world are using trans rights as a way to engage people in rallying for their causes and to undermine democracy. Jones laid out for us how the fundamentalists and evangelicals of old have grown into the Christian nationalist movement that we witness now, and how they have been able to capture a major political party instead of just being part of a coalition. This is one of the challenges that we have been facing. They hold all the power, or at least the overwhelming majority of power in the party. There's no way to balance their voices as there was before. The fringe party of the 80s is now who is in charge. They are seeking to create a society in their image, a religious image that dictates some of us aren't people, aren't worthy of justice and compassion, aren't meant to be treated as human, who have fewer rights and who may well be disposable. Trans rights and transphobia allow Christian nationalists to unify their base against a shared other or threat, while also engaging and bringing into their fold people who say that they oppose Christian nationalists just enough to vote the way Christian nationalists want and get them into office where they can then do whatever they want. It wasn't an accident. Millions of dollars went into researching what would be an ideal issue that would appeal to the broadest base of voters to unite to their side. And just enough to get into that little middle part of people who were undecided or undecided enough. It's an issue that was designed to divide, Jones says, and it has been wildly successful. They are testing what they can do on a tiny percentage of the population to determine what they can get away with a little farther down the line. And lastly, the Reverend Leela Sinha offered the Berry Street essay titled Tricksters and Tyrannies. The Berry Street is the oldest lecture series in North America and has been running since 1820. In Reverend Sinha's Berry Street, they say that we are in need not only of truth-telling and leading and protesting and doing all the things that we know to do, but that we also need some of what they call transformative mischief. Mischief that relates with imagination and play, ways that we learn and explore new ideas and activities using a different part of our brains than we see with intellectual thinking. This will let us engage with possibilities and new ways of movement that can help us find our ways through this time. This is necessary for us if we want to overcome fascism and authoritarianism. We cannot use the master's tools to dismantle the master's house, as St. Audre Lorde told us. We have to choose terms on which we will prevail as us, they say. The role of religious institutions is to resist empire. It is to create community, to celebrate with one another, to care for one another. They use the story of Robin Hood, or the stories more accurately, to help us imagine what resistance in this time might look like. One of Robin Hood's primary tools was his cleverness, which he would use for the benefit of those most in need. He also did things he wasn't supposed to do, like inviting nobles he was robbing to feast with him and his comrades instead of attacking them like others did. He was skilled at changing the narrative and living his values while creating a healthier, more just, kinder, better community among outlaws than there was in society. And my last note from this essay, which I encourage you to watch for yourselves, they tell us to not let the the stone that Sisyphus was given, to not let that stone that we're trying to roll up the hill together be the thing that defines us or unites us. We must be more. We must want more. We are more. As you can tell, this General Assembly was full of enriching and affirming experiences and encounters that deepened and challenged our understandings of ourselves as Unitarian Universalists in this moment. I believe that every UU should attend at least one if they can. As our faith continues to change and grow, this is an excellent way to participate in its formation.